analysis. So let's quickly get into the passages. So here the first question is all about, let's get into the last part. Is the ban correct in the given scenario? So the right answer for this question is option D. No, since the bond was valid on November 16, 2022. This is because, so it is clearly mentioned in the passage that the electoral bonds shall be valid for 15 calendar days from the date of issue. Okay, by considering this particular statement, we have marked option D as the right one. I hope it is clear. So let's get into the next question. So this question is all about, the government announces that there would be a sale of a 24th tranche of electoral bonds on February 10, 2023 for a period of 15 days. So what can be the right answer for this question is option D. No, since the changes to the electoral bond scheme 2018 provide that electoral bonds can be issued from additional period of 15 days in years where there is an election to the legislative assembly of a state. Let's just go back to the passage. So it is mentioned that, it is clearly mentioned in the passage that in the year of general elections to the legislative assembly of any states or union territories. Okay, so it has mentioned clearly that it is any state. Okay, by going with this particular statement, we have marked option D as the right answer. Option D as the right answer, because in the question it clearly mentioned that the state in which Assad resides, the state in which Assad resides, he claims that the government does not have the power to issue 24th tranche electoral bonds in 2013, but the passage clearly says that it is any state or union territory, which is why option D can be the right answer. So let's go back to the next question. Yes, so the answer for this question is option B. No, since the party has already deposited the bond and the money had been credited to its account. So, by going with the question, this thing is the party had already deposited the bond, which is why automatically the amount will be credited to his account. This is also cited in the passage. Next, the answer for 69th question is option C. No, since it does not fulfill the eligibility criteria announced in November 15, 2022 notification. It's clearly mentioned in the question itself. On November 15, 2022, the government issues another notification announcing that from the date onwards, only political parties that have received at least 1% of votes polled in the last elections to the Lok Sabha. So, by going with the question, we have marked option C as the right answer. The next question. So in this scenario, the right answer would be option A. The bond was no longer valid. Let's just understand why it is option A. So it is mentioned in the paragraph, in the passage that the electoral bond shall be valid for 15 calendar days from the date of issue. So, and also under the 24th tranche from the authorized branches of the State Bank of India. So, we are going by these two statements. The answer for the 70th question is option A. The bond was no longer valid because here, when the PPP representative goes to an authorized branch of the State Bank of India to deposit the electoral bond on December 5th. So the bond was actually issued on, like the date is November 15. Okay. From that it has to be 15 days, 15 calendar days additionally. That means it goes to November 30. But in the given question it is December 5th, which is why the bond was no longer valid. Yes, the second passage is all about consumer protection. So let's quickly go back to the questions. The first question here is, which of the following statements is correct? And the right answer would be option C. CLML is not a consumer since it has purchased the laptop for commercial services, because it is clearly mentioned in the passage that the consumer protection law does not apply to people who use goods and services for commercial purposes. Okay, so here CLML company is not a consumer, which is why it has purchased the laptops for commercial purposes. The next question is, which of the following statements is correct in this scenario? So it is option yes. Here the question is, which of the following statements is correct? So let's go back to the passage once. It's clearly mentioned in the passage that there are some exceptions to this. For example, people who use goods for self-employment are considered as consumers. So according to the given question, Sita Das is a woman who has been working as a freelancer journalist, and she writes columns and news reports for various newspapers. So the question is, she has, however, within a month of the purchase, the laptop crashed and there was a motherboard failure. So she basically bought a new laptop. And since she's a self-employed woman, so it can be option C. Since she is using the laptop for the purpose of earning her livelihood, which is nothing but self-employment as given in the passage, she will be a consumer. And the next question is, yes, the answer for this question is option B. The hospital resells the pacemaker. In the passage, they have only mentioned that if a person has bought anything from online or from any shopkeeper or anything like that, but they did not mention about reselling of products. Okay, by going with that statement, we have marked option B as the correct answer. The next question is, yes, which of the following statements can be correctly inferred? Since online services are covered under consumer protection, by consumer protection, Amit Ghosh shall be considered as a consumer. So this is something which is mentioned in the passage. What is it? Persons using online facility. A consumer also includes any person who buys or hires goods or services online. Okay, so considering this particular statement, we have marked option C as the right answer, because this is something which is done through online. That is the reason Amit Ghosh shall be considered as a consumer. And the next question is option B. Since Jignesh Shah is a user of the device, he can be considered as a consumer. So this is also something which is clearly mentioned in the passage. person buying and using goods and services. A consumer includes any person who buys goods and services as well as anyone who uses them. If you bought something, then if you are using it for yourself, then also it is considered. Okay, so going by that statement, the right answer is option B. Since Jignesh Shah is a user of the device, he can be considered as a consumer. Yes, the third passage is all about free legal aid, and we also have this particular, all the legal services are basically governed by Legal Services Authority Act, and it is provided by NALSA, and the abbreviation form of it is National Legal Services Authority, and the passage is entirely talking about free legal aid. So let's quickly get into the questions. Yes, so Divya was arrested by the police, and okay, the question is Divya entitled to support from NALSA? So the answer for this question is option C. Yes, she is entitled to free legal aid in the Supreme Court proceedings because she is a woman. So let us go back to the passage and understand why it is option C. So it's clearly mentioned in the passage that free legal aid is confined to cases before subordinate courts, and free legal aid must be provided to the needy from the lowest court to the Supreme Court. By considering this statement, we have marked option C as the right answer. Clear? And the next question is, yes, it is option A. Yes, since section 13 clause 1 of the Act provides that free legal aid can be provided if NALSA is satisfied that the person has a genuine case to prosecute, and they did not believe that Divya had a genuine case to prosecute. Now going back to the passage, it is mentioned here that to receive free legal aid provided that NALSA is satisfied that such a person has a genuine case to prosecute or defend the matter. Okay, by considering this statement, we have marked option A as the right answer. The next question is NALSA right in refusing free legal aid to Riya? Then definitely the answer is option D. No, since Riya is a woman and is entitled to free legal aid as long as NALSA is satisfied she has a genuine case. So the reason for this question can be, under section 12 of the Act, few ingredients are mentioned. So since Riya is a woman, she is entitled to legal services provided by NALSA. Next, the 79th question. Here, the right answer is option B. No, since he does not fit within any of the categories under section 12 of the Act. Let us just go back to the passage and understand. The person, Farhan, does not fall within the purview of section 12 because a person who can avail legal services under NALSA has to be a member of a scheduled caste or scheduled tribe, and a woman or a child, a person with a disability, an industrial workman, or a person in police custody. So Farhan does not come under any of the following criteria, which is why the right option can be option B. No, since he does not fit within any of the categories under section 12 of the Act. And the next question is, here the essential thing that we have to understand is, yes, since he was in police custody, is Vikram entitled to free legal aid from NALSA? He is not entitled to, he is entitled to legal aid because he was in the police custody. The confusing part in this question is, Vikram is a rich businessman. Usually the free legal aid is is provided only to the needy or poor people. But one more thing that is overridden is the person is in police custody, and according to the given passage, section 12, under section 12 of the act, a person who is in the police custody is entitled to free legal aid. Despite Vikram is a rich businessman, we considered that this person is in police custody, which is why we are providing free legal aid to Vikram. So the right option is answer option C. Yes, since he was in the police custody. Okay. Now the fourth passage is all about internet shutdowns. So let's get into the questions. The first question here is this order legal? That is what is the question. So let's understand. So the right answer for this question is option D. No, because the order was indefinite. Why is it indefinite? So the reason for this particular question is clearly mentioned in the passage. The magistrate's order cannot be longer than 2 months. By going with this particular reason, we have marked option D as the right answer, which is option D. No, because the order was indefinite. So let us just understand a bit deeply. In 2014, India was hit by a terrible pandemic. So yeah, WhatsApp and Facebook groups became common platforms for sharing information. Messages were forwarded, and many of these messages prescribed different remedies to prevent and cure the flu. So in a particular district, that is Meroda district, people following these remedies began to fall sick. So the already overburdened public sector hospitals became even more full. The district administration requested people to stop sharing misinformation. However, these requests were not heeded. The district magistrate issued an indefinite order to shut down the internet. The district magistrate issued an indefinite order to shut down the internet to prevent the transmission of these messages. So the order given by the district magistrate, is it legal or illegal? It's not illegal also. Is it valid? Is it legal, or does it fall within the ambit of the district magistrate's order or not? That is the whole point here. So the reason for this question is the only order that is given by the magistrate can be only valid for 2 months, not more than 2 months. Next, the question here for the 82nd is, now the issue is before the Supreme Court. What will the court decide? The answer for this can be option C. The government's order is not legal under the temporary suspension rules because the nationwide internet shutdown order was not necessary or unavoidable. So let us cite the same thing in the passage. It is clearly mentioned in the passage that the union or the state government these rules, the temporary suspension rules, that internet shutdowns can now only be ordered by the Home Secretary of the union or state governments only in unavoidable circumstances. So this is the correct reasoning for the question. So that is why we have marked option C as the correct one. The government's order is not legal under the temporary suspension rules because the nationwide internet shutdown was not necessary or unavoidable. And the next question is option. Against this, consider the following statements. The Communications Minister had the power to pass the order under 2017 rules. The passing of the order by the Communication Minister was avoidable. The power to pass the order remained with the Home Secretary. The Communications Minister did not have the power to pass the order under the 2017 rules. So here, which of the following statements are false? And the correct answer is option B. It is statement 1 which is false. The Communications Minister had the power to pass the order under the 2017 rules. This is an incorrect statement because the passage clearly said that passing of orders be delegated to someone lower than the rank of Joint Secretary to the Government of India. Okay, so yes, so here someone lower than the rank of Joint Secretary to the Government of India. So by going with this particular statement, we have marked option B as the right answer. Clear? And the next question is, the committee reviewed and approved of the order on 22 October 2021. Is the order legal? And the right answer for this would be option B. No, because the procedure under the 2017 rules was not followed. And going back to the passage, it clearly mentioned that they have to be reviewed within 5 working days, and the review was here as per the given passage. They have mentioned that the criteria is within 5 working days, but it did not fall within the 5 working days, which is why the answer for this question is option B. No, because the procedure was not followed here. Next, consider the following statements and which of the following statements mentioned here are true. So the students' rights under Article 19 Clause 1 Clause A was violated by the state order. So here the right answer can be option C. 3 statements. So here the right answer for this is 3 statements. So all the statements 1, 2, 3 are true, but statement 4 is false, because it is clearly mentioned in the passage that the Supreme Court's judgment in Anuradha Basin's case had also underlined that shutdown orders must clearly provide reasons for shutdown and they must be publicly available. Okay, so by considering this statement, we have marked option C as the right answer. The passage 5 talks about Twitter. So let's get into the questions now. The question here is, Unreal claims that Sunil has not provided a clear detailed reason for blocking the post, and so the order is not valid. Is Unreal right in this scenario? So the answer for this question can be option B. No, the blocking order is valid since Sunil has provided reasons for blocking the post. Why this is the answer? Because it's clearly mentioned in the passage that High Court that Union Government orders to block certain Twitter handles and post must contain some reasons. Okay, post must contain reasons for the same. By going with this particular statement, we have marked option B as the right answer. Now let's go to the next question. So here the question is, Unreal claims that this order is invalid. Is Unreal right? And the right answer for this is option A. Yes, since it did not provide any reasons that could be communicated to the users of the social media platform. Let's just go back to the passage once. It's clearly mentioned that after the reasons are listed, then it must be communicated to the users of the microblogging site. So the main essential point that is to be considered here is communication plays an important aspect in the given question. So for that reason, option A is the right answer. Now the next question is, Andrea claims that Sunil has broken the law by making these statements in the letter. Is unreal right? So the right answer for this is option D. No, since the IT Act does not forbid Sunil from doing so. So let us just cite where it is there in the passage. It's clearly mentioned here that the government has power to strip away such safe harbor immunity under the IT Act. So the government is having that power to strip away, which is why we have marked option D as the right answer. So the next question is, Sachin asks Unreal to share the reasons for blocking order, which they do, yet Sachin claims the blocking order is invalid. Is he right? So the answer for this question is option C. Yes, since section 69 of the IT Act only permits blocking information or a particular post but not a whole account. But in this scenario, they have blocked the whole account. But according to the passage, section 69 of the Act does not permit blocking of the whole account, which is why we have marked option C as the right answer. Section 69 only permits blocking particular information or a particular post and not the whole account. The next question is, when Sachin finds out, he claims that this was wrong on Unreal's part and the blocking order was inappropriate. Which of the following statements is most accurate in this regard? So the right answer is option A. Blocking order is valid, but Unreal's actions were inappropriate. Here, the blocking order is valid because they are having proper reasons, but Unreal's actions are inappropriate because they did not communicate, which is why we have marked option A as the correct answer. They did not communicate. The next passage is, so the passage 6 is talking about cruelty. So let's just quickly get into the questions. Ashwin and Ashima were married in February 2020. In March 2020, Ashwin asked Ashima to take care of all household work such as cooking, cleaning, etc. As he was very busy with his professional responsibilities. Ashima claims that this amounts to treating her like a maid servant and constitutes an offence under section 498 of the IPC. Applying the Bombay High Court decision, is she likely to succeed? And the answer for this is option B, no, since Ashwin had only asked Ashima to do their household work and not for others. Now let's just go back to the passage. So it's clearly mentioned by the court that if a married lady is asked to do household work for the purpose of the family, it cannot be said that it is like a maid servant. So the court itself has said in its judgment that doing household work cannot be considered as cruelty, which is why in the question we have marked option B as the right answer. The next question is, in April 2020, Ashwin's friend Rakesh visits Ashwin and Ashima's house and stays with them for a few days. During his visit, he is very mean to Ashima and uses abusive language with her. He also threw a plate at her one evening when he was unhappy with the meal that she had prepared. Ashima now claims that Rakesh has committed an offence under section 498 of the IPC. Is she likely to succeed? And the answer for this is option C, no, since Rakesh is not her husband and nor he is related to her. So, if you just understand the passage, nowhere it is mentioned that a friend or somebody who is not at all related to the woman cannot, will fall under the definition of section 498 clause A. It's only the husband or in-laws. Only to that extent it is mentioned, and since Rakesh is her friend, he will not be considered as, he will not fall within the purview of section 498A. The next question is, frustrated and upset with her marriage, Ashima applies for and is granted a divorce from Ashwin in November 2020. Since she and Ashwin had been friends for many years before they got married, she stays in touch with him. She moves into her own apartment and starts going to office regularly at her job. Ashwin is very upset at this and starts treating Ashima very cruelly. Ashima again claims that Ashwin has committed an offence under section 498A of the IPC. Is she right? So the answer for this is option D, no, since she is no longer married to Ashwin. This is a direct question. Only if they are married, if they are together, then this particular section will be applied. Since they are no longer husband and wife, they got divorced. This is why we marked option D as the right answer. The next question is, so here they mention a separate act which is Protection of Rights of Married Women Act 2021. So according to this, asking a married woman to take care of household chores would be an offence. So here, upon hearing about this new law, Ashima once again alleges that Ashwin has committed an offence under section 498A of the IPC and claims compensation under POMWA for his actions. Is she right and will she succeed? So here it is option B. Ashima will get compensation under the Protection of Rights of Married Women Act 2021, but she is not right about Ashwin committing an offence under section 498. So according to the new law, it's only mentioned about getting, it's only mentioned that a married woman is entitled to get compensation, but it did not talk about section 498A of IPC, like committing an offence. The next question is, Ashima tells Shamita that her husband's actions would amount to an offence under section 498A of IPC, even though Ashima herself has been unsuccessful in having Ashwin convicted under the section in the past. Is Ashima's advice to Shamita correct? Then the answer is option A. Yes, section 498A has now been changed. See, it's clearly mentioned in the question. The government changes section 498A of the IPC, and this particular change is saying that a married woman to do household works and all, even for their own family by herself, would be considered as cruelty. In the earlier situation, before this particular new act came, Ashima doing her household work is something which does not come under section 498A. But since it has been changed now, this, according to the factual situation mentioned here, it is option A. Whatever the advice that Ashima has given to Shamita is valid. So the seventh passage is talking about surrogacy. Now let's see what the questions are about. Rani and Shiva would like to opt for surrogacy. They have been married for 6 years. Rani is 51 and Shiva is aged 53. Both Rani and Shiva have built successful business empires. They are now working together on a joint initiative. Due to the demanding nature of their work, they have not thought about children previously. However, they are now keen to have a child via surrogacy. Are Rani and Shiva eligible for surrogacy under the SRA? So here the important thing that you have to remember is Rani is aged 51 and Shiva is aged 53. Now let's go back to the passage. So it's clearly mentioned in the passage that the conditions. The couple is deemed eligible for surrogacy only if they have been married for 5 years, and the next one is the husband's age should be between 26 25 years, and wife's age should be 23 to 50, between 23 to 15 years. So it's given in the question that both of them are above 50 years. So this is a condition which is not satisfied, which is why we have marked option C as the correct answer. No, because they do not fall within the legal requirements of intending parents. Though they have been married for 6 years, the age requirement, age criteria is something which is not qualifying here. The next question is, so we have which of the following statements are false? Geeta is eligible to be a surrogate because she is a close relative. Geeta has been a surrogate only twice and is now eligible to be a surrogate for Rani. Geeta is eligible to be a surrogate because she is a mother. Geeta is eligible to be a surrogate because she is 29. Here, the answer is option A. Statement 3. Only this particular statement is false. Geeta has been a surrogate only twice. So let's go back to the passage. It's clearly mentioned in the passage that the surrogate who has been a surrogate only once in her life. A surrogate can only, she can only be a surrogate for once in her lifetime. But in the question is given that she has already been a surrogate mother twice. So that is a false statement, which is why we have marked option A as the right answer. That is the incorrect statement. The next question is, Joseph and Nina are keen to have a child via surrogacy. They have been married for 8 years and have been unable to conceive biologically due to infertility. Joseph is 40 years old and Nina is 42 years old. They have an adopted daughter, Maya, who is 4 years old. Maya has been diagnosed with Stryker syndrome, which would cause slow neurological deterioration, which causes death. Devastated, Joseph and Nina decide to opt for surrogacy to become parents to their biological child. Are they eligible for surrogacy? Then it is yes, because their adopted child has been diagnosed with Stryker's syndrome. So it's clearly mentioned in the passage that adopted children are Indian couples with biological or adopted children are prohibited from undertaking surrogacy, save for some exceptions such as mentally or physically challenged children or those suffering from life-threatening disorder or fatal illness. So, since in the question their child Maya is suffering from a disorder and that is something which causes the death of that particular child, both Nina and her husband are eligible to go for surrogacy. So which is why we have marked option C as the right answer. They can go for surrogacy. The next question is 99. It's option B. No, because SRA allows only altruistic surrogacy, so the contract is not valid under ICA. So this is the surrogacy clinic and they have employed few women here aged between 25 and 35 years. So the paragraph clearly says that commercial surrogacy is something which is banned. Commercialization of surrogacy services or procedures or its component services or component procedures are banned in India. Now, for that reason, we have marked option B as the right answer. No, because SRA allows only altruistic surrogacy, so the contract is not valid under the ICA. The next question is, yes, so here these two people are homosexual, they are in a homosexual relationship, and according to the Hindu Marriage Act, marriage is allowed only between heterosexual couples. So here the main question is, Karan and Daniel argue that SRA discriminates against them on the basis of sexual orientation because it restricts surrogacy to heterosexual couples alone. Which of the following arguments would most strongly support their claim in court? The right answer is option C. The non-discrimination clause is not restricted to explicitly mentioned grounds. So it is mentioned in the paragraph that, so it is clearly given in the question itself, no citizen shall be discriminated on the basis of sex, caste, religion, nationality, place of birth or any other ground. So since it is mentioned that any other grounds will also be there, which is why we marked option C, that non-discrimination clause is something which is not restricted to explicitly mentioned grounds. So it can be any ground. Sexual orientation is something which can fall under the any grounds. Yes, the 8th passage and the last passage is talking about Criminal Procedure Identification Act 2022, and the first question here is, was Bhargesh bound to provide his finger impressions under the act? And the right answer is option C. No, since the rules had not yet been notified. If you see the passage, it's clearly mentioned that on September 19, 2022, the Ministry of Home Affairs notified the rules under the Act, that is September 19. In the question, it is mentioned that Bhargesh is arrested by police on April 11, 2022. That means he was arrested by the police on April 11, 2022. But the Act is notified in the month of September 2022, which is why option C is the right answer. The rules had not yet been notified. The next question is, the magistrate issues the order but Bhargesh refuses to provide the blood samples. Is Bhargesh bound to provide his blood samples to police under the Act? So it is option B, yes, since the magistrate had passed an order directing him to do so. So this is something which is also mentioned in the passage. The Act empowers a magistrate to direct any person to give measurements to the police, which till now was reserved for convicts and those involved in heinous crimes. So according to this particular statement, so since this is an order which is given by the magistrate, he is bound to follow it. The next question is, Bhargesh refuses again. Yeah, this is the factual scenario. Is Bhargesh bound his photographs to the police under the Act? Then it is a no, since he was not charged or under arrest in connection of offence at time.
Yeah.
Yes, here the answer is option A. No, since he was not charged or under arrest in connection offence at time. So it's clearly mentioned in the passage that however the rules state that measurements of those detained under preventive sections of the Criminal Procedure Code, which is CRPC, shall not be taken unless such person is at the time charged or under arrest in connection with any other offence punishable under any other law. So considering this particular thing from the passage, we have marked option A as the right answer for the 103rd question. Now 104. Bhargesh files a case in court claiming that the constable's actions violate the Act. Will he succeed? So here the main question is, a regular police constable forces him to stand still and takes his photograph. So here the answer is option B. Yes, since only police personnel of the rank of head constable or above can take measurements of any person who resists or refuses to give measurements when ordered to do so by a magistrate. Let's go back to the passage once. It's clearly mentioned that it also enables police personnel of the rank of head constable or above to take measurements of any person who resists or refuses to give measurements when ordered to do so by the magistrate. But it's given in the question that it is not a head constable, but it is a regular police constable, which is why we have marked option B as the right answer. The next question is, the police now tell Bhagyesh he must provide them his iris and retina scans. Is Bhagyesh required to do so? Then it is option D, no, since the magistrate had not issued the order passed. So this is the explanation video for the passages that were asked in the CLAT 2023